Good evening and welcome to the Orkney International Science Festival online. My name is Heather Woodbridge and it is my pleasure to be hosting this session from North Ronaldsay in Orkney. The Orkney International Science Festival is entering its 30th year this year, and we are marking the occasion with our very first online festival, and we are delighted to be able to bring you a full festival programme directly to where you are at this moment. So this evening, I'm delighted to introduce Elizabeth Woodcock. Elizabeth may already be known to some of you as she's a writer for the Orkney International Science Festival's magazine, Frontiers. She was born and is currently based in Cumbria. She is a walk leader and horticulturist and is a postgraduate diploma in environmental ethics from the University of Central Lanarkshire. And she divides her time between the Eden Valley and the Lake District, where she explores a relationship of landscape and home. When her hands are not deep in the earth, she is up high and following the calls of the ravens. And there's a tempting teaser for the talk this evening. Now, just a wee reminder for you all, if you have any questions for Elizabeth, please enter them into the YouTube Live chat anytime throughout the presentation, and we'll come to those at the end for a bit of a discussion. Well, I'm really looking forward to Elizabeth's talk this evening, and I better hand over to Elizabeth. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Heather, and thank you everyone who's tuned in to watch. So this story starts about 15 years ago when I was living in Dubai. And Dubai boasts the world's biggest buildings rising out of the desert, and its highway is an 8-lane motorway. And it was when I was living in Dubai that I had a dream, and the dream simply said, go home. And I saw Cumbria where I was born. So I returned here, and ever since I've been exploring this idea of what is home, what is land and scape. And I came to realize that home isn't necessarily a place of four walls. And because of this, it might be hard to find. So this talk tonight is about mapping that way back home. Soaring, that's the word, on top of the world, or so it seems, above the busy valleys below, side by side with the ravens as they soar on the upblasts of winter blizzard rushing skywards. I soar with them, and for a moment, I can see their eyes as they hold a position just teetering on the edge of a funnel of air, seemingly enjoying themselves. Ravens cavort and can fly upside down in a display of aerial acrobatics. They can also make over 30 sounds which tell me that I'm home. Before lockdown, I walked up high and soared, feel-good chemicals whooshing through my brain. And this landscape was my home where I felt safe, nourished and at peace. I walked as though my feet were kissing the earth and the ravens were lifting me with their wings. I walked into the hills, altars under the heavens, and into a love affair of intimacy. This poem, called Why You Go Hill Walking by Ellie Danick, says it perfectly. Because you were a mountain baby born with pebbles in your mouth, the future carved on your limestone bones, the strings of your DNA thrawn all wrong, two buzzards in your eyes wheeling and dipping into clouds. Because you think in landscape, drink the peat's bitter smell as you labour further up towards thickening silence, the heart thumping in your ears. When you clutch a map, its creases swell like river veins, then shrink under the heel of your palm. Because your body remembers the sudden blossom of blisters, gales slapping your face, and hill flanks the colour of old blood. And you collect strange gifts from glens licked flat by glaciers, scraps of sky, scrapes of deer prayer. Because they follow you home, those soft peaked shadows, and loom on your doorstep. You hear their breathing in your sleep, their whispers muffle your dreams. And yet, during lockdown in March 2020, the whole world stopped. We were grounded, and the rug of life was pulled. The contents was thrown high and tumbled back down in a tangled heap. Life turned upside down and inside out. And by late April, I drifted into a space of what was real. It was a cocktail of COVID-19. Who has the truth? Lockdown, fear, and grief. I couldn't go to that which I loved so intensely and who filled me with so much joy and aliveness. We couldn't go where we wanted, see who we wanted. All those avenues were shut down. And when a crisis hits, what did you do? Rudyard Kipling wrote a poem, The Way Through the Woods, about a road that was shut down. They shut the road through the woods 70 years ago. Weather and rain haven't done it again. And now you would never know there was once a road through the woods. Before they planted the trees, it is underneath the coppice and heath and the thin anemones. Only the keeper sees that where the ringdove broods and the badgers roll at ease, there was once a road through the woods. Yet if you enter the woods of a summer evening late, when the night air cools on the trout-ringed pools, where the otter whistles his mate, they fear not men in the woods because they see so few. You will hear the beat of a horse's feet and the swish of a skirt in the dew, steadily cantering through the misty solitudes, as though they perfectly knew the old lost road through the woods. But there is no road through the woods. Road shut down. So like many, I walked. Grandparents walked, children walked, families walked. Those who normally zoomed off to work walked. Every day I walked up an old road, a lane, and witnessed spring unfold. This lane became a path, and I followed generations of foot, hoof, and paw, crossing a field accompanied by skylark, curlew, and lapwing, calling out as the sun grew stronger. Watching running hares at dawn as the dewy mist rose into the light, dodging swifts at sundown as they picked off insects, feeling their feathers in the air, slicing past my cheek. Jan Dean, in her poem, Colouring In, writes of this merging. And staying in the lines is fine, but I like it when stuff leaks, when the blue bird and the blue sky are just one blur of blue, blue flying, and the feeling of the feathers in the air and the wind along the blade of wing is a long gash of smudgy colour. I like it when the flowers and the sunshine puddle red and orange, yellow into orange, the way the hot sun on my back lulls me, muddles me sleepy in the scented garden, makes me part of the picture, part of the place. In the garden, like many, I put my hands into the warming earth and planted a seed, a conscious act of intention, plugging back into an intelligence greater than myself. It was a relief. This was real, no doubt, returning home, grounding, consciously re-establishing connection under a waning worm moon and a waxing pink moon. To plant a seed is to be filled up with life, relax, nurture, restore, care for another, and become part of. When you hold a dried pea in your hand, it's hard to imagine that it will grow into a pea plant with thread-like tendrils that wind delicately, but definitely climbing up and up to produce flowers that transform into pods and peas, so sweet and succulent to taste. It feels like an act of faith and a prayer to place a seed in the dark earth. Pray it germinates, that it will grow. When the first green head breaks the soil, its journey to mature plant with fruits to harvest could be said to be a miracle. Slugs and snails, mice and voles, pigeons and tree sparrows will also passionately, feverishly, greedily express an interest in your miraculous pea and its growing journey into the sky. The frosts may come late, the winds brutal, the rains stop. This spring, the sun shone, and many chose to work alongside nature, learning the wisdom of sharing, releasing expectations, growing humility, and creative solutions to restore balance and harvest. You'll spend a lot of time on your knees, in the humus, the decaying plant and animal matter. You'll find richness to feed your plants and your bones. In the same humus, you'll find humility and wonder, and recognition of our interdependent human nature. Rachel Carson, author of Silent Spring, wrote, "It is a wholesome and necessary thing for us to turn again to the earth, and in contemplation of her beauties, to know the sense of wonder and humility. And as I cared and tended, the world outside my doorstep responded and exploded in unstoppable life. Or more possibly, I'd slowed down to notice the frenzied chaos, exploding like the first stars in an order and intelligence beyond comprehension. Jackdaws popping up and down chimneys, song thrush fighting off pigeons for the best spot to nest in the bush, blue tits returning to the hole in the old apple tree, and tree sparrows seemingly to rugby tattle each other under the hedge, while the same blackbird sang from the same place up high every night. Noticing how each bird builds its intricate constructions of devotion and care, little wren in an encased cocoon, house martin made of mud. It goes on. Nature does not stop. It does not lock down. Roads and shops, pubs and cafes, aeroplanes and holiday resorts shut down. But the continuous, life-affirming processes of nature flow. As Rachel Carson writes in Silent Spring, those who contemplate the beauty of the earth find reserves of strength that will endure as long as life lasts. There is something infinitely healing in the repeated refrains of nature, the assurance that dawn comes after night and spring after winter. We fit back in and are fed, coming to rest as part of a vast whole. If we slow down and notice, relish and partake, feel and be present, we receive that constant turning of life back consciously. We are fed into our bellies, bodies, hearts, and souls. When the birds bless our gardens, when the hedgehogs, frogs, and ladybirds come, I feel reassured, nurtured, and nourished right back as the web of life is restoring. When the rhubarb ripens, the peas we planted pop open in abundance, and the tang of black currants hits through taste bud to temple. When a child freely and willingly eats vegetables that they've planted. When an awesome feeling erupts inside from digging up potatoes, nourishing nodes of goodness, growing themselves silently in the dark earth, it is joy and gratitude all wrapped into one. The nurturing brilliance of a rose unfurling at her own pace, petal wrapped around petal, wrapping soft arms about me and holding me in a spell of wonder, appreciation, and goodness. This process of giving and receiving is essential in any relationship. When you give, give freely, like a rose in bloom, like the breath coming in and out of your lungs. Carlo Rovelli, leading theoretical physicist and author, writes, "Nature is our home, and in nature we are at home. This strange, multicolored, and astonishing world which we explore is not something that estranges us from our true selves, for this is only what our natural curiosity reveals to us about the place of our dwelling, about the stuff of which we ourselves are made. And we are made of the same stuff as the birds and butterflies, the rocks and roses, the cobwebs and clouds, trees and streams. As this place of our dwelling, called home, with each other, we really are in all this together. We are of the same fabric existing within, born out of an explosion of stars, woven deep into a web of elements that creates majesty and beauty present all around in the silent wing of an owl, in the bone-white bark of the birch. We are 61% water, and 99% of our body mass is made of the 6 main elements, the most common in the earth. The same carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, nitrogen, and sulfur that makes animal bones, leaves, mosses, rocks, and oceans, that the computer you're using is made from. We are the natural world. Nan Shepherd, author of The Living Mountain, embraced all living things and wrote in a letter to a friend in 1940, "To apprehend things, walking on a hill, seeing the light change, the mist, the dark, being aware, using the whole of one's body to instruct the spirit. It dissolves one's being. I am no longer myself, but part of a life beyond myself. And Carlo Rovelli continues, we are made up of the same atoms and the same light signals as are exchanged between pine trees and the mountains and stars in the galaxies. Quantum mechanics and experiments with particles have taught us that the world is a continuous, restless swarming of things, a continuous coming to light and disappearance of ephemeral entities, a set of vibrations, as in the switched on happenings of the hippie world of the 1960s, a world of happenings, not things. During lockdown, I became immersed in this continuous, restless swarming of things, this flow of nature up that lane I walked every day and in my garden, breathtaking and seamless motion, constantly changing, emerging and dying, emerging and fading back away. I'd practice yoga at sunrise, my head in a field of dandelions, stretching up under an old mother oak that linked branches with a gnarly hawthorn. As Rovelli continues, we, like waves and like all objects, are a flux of events. We are processes, for a brief time monotonous. For a brief moment of time, we are monotonous and hold this form. A dandelion is a thing to behold. It is constantly unfolding, flowing, becoming, fading from the mother plant rooted deep in the earth, drawing up all those vital minerals and nutrients the topsoil needs. An oak tree can hold its monotonous form for hundreds of years if not felled. Deep riveted bark, smells of earth and dust and sunlight, but words cannot convey the sensory meeting with an old sun-drenched oak. Go and touch one, and let your senses run free as you lay your hand upon and smell the bark. Its canopy stretching over your head, roots fanning under your feet, and wider still with networks of mycelium radiating kilometers. Comprehend the holding of the many happenings in that bark. A touch of lightning, an owl's nest, a time when wild animals ran freer. Do you get a sense of that? If you allow yourself to quietly press your cheek against the rough, time-chiseled bark. Research is starting to confirm that trees boost our immune systems through the chemical phytonicides that they release. And that being with trees can lower your blood pressure, reduce stress, improve mood, and ability to focus. What if during lockdown, we allowed ourselves to come up for this fresh air, out of the stress of modern day life, slowed down and took a deep breath, and let ourselves unfurl too, to see, feel, experience a tree, flower, stone, a river, experience each other and experience our skin touching another. What if you were touched by wonder? What if each puddle on the path was an eye of the earth looking up at you? Each branch, a hand reaching out to you. Each waterfall, a voice, a murmur in the gurgle of a running stream. What if the sun stroking your face was the soft, loving hand of a dear one? Would you then travel so fast? What if you realized or felt that you lived within this animate, living world that loved you back? Would you then travel so fast? But what if, instead of superimposing our language on nature, labeling each separate thing, we listened to the language of nature, fully immersed like a child running carefree, fully present and listening to the sound of a rushing river ricocheting off wet trees, bark glistening, water droplets dripping from the leafy branch onto red earth, the rasp of a wasp scratching dried wood for its nest, the click of a twig, the flick of a branch as a deer sets off, the squelch of a peat bog the crash of an owl's wings as it breaks cover, the rustle of soft purple grass heads in a fully flushed meadow, the hoo of a pigeon drifting softly into our ear, cut through by the caw of a crow. Notice the beauty and hear the call, a call that can penetrate our hardened human shells of knowing it all. This picture was done by a friend's 9-year-old daughter during lockdown. Notice the beauty. Dr. Robin Wall-Kimner, author, botanist, biologist, distinguished teaching professor of environmental biology, writes that for some of us, our senses seem to be strangely dulled. With sophisticated technology, we strive to see what is beyond us, but are often blind to the myriad sparkling facets that lie so close at hand. Our acuity at this middle scale seems diminished, not by any failing of our eyes, but by a willingness of the mind. And Albert Einstein said, a human being is a part of a whole called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feeling as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of the consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. For Einstein, we are imprisoned by limited consciousness, which separates us from the whole of nature in its beauty. And Dr. Robin Wall-Kimner asks, why is the world so beautiful? That is a question that needs embracing. And Nicola Davis, in her poem, The Weather Watchers, writes of our mental prison lyrically. What are we doing? What have we done? And how can we be different? We must look up from the bottom of our pond where we currently preambulate like larval dragonflies, focused only on a point where our arms can grasp. Look up and see the picture that the weather watchers make, that connects us to our world, to each other, and the future we might live. Speaking at the Hay Festival earlier this year, Roman Krznaric, author of The Good Ancestor, How to Think Long-Term in a Short-Term World, asked, are we being good ancestors? Krznaric talks of our marshmallow brain and our acorn brain. Marshmallow brain is concerned with the short term, meeting our needs now and of surviving. Acorn brain is a place of care, compassion, long-term planning, and understanding consequences to actions. So we need to learn to switch on our acorn brains and think about the legacies that we're going to leave, not react knee-jerk like we're being attacked or for instant gratification, rather acting like there is a tomorrow and responding appropriately. For Krznaric, he does this through cathedral thinking. And he says, we need to extend our time horizons into millennia, not days. We need long-term responsibility and intergenerational connection. Right now, politics is played by short-term decision-making. We need future generation committees, future design, and establishing legal rights for future generations. Our acorn brain is our prefrontal cortex. Our marshmallow brain is our limbic or mammalian brain, and we are born with them unconnected. They're not switched on until we're about 15 and fully integrated if development has gone normally by the time we're about 25. The prefrontal cortex is important to integrate because it holds these executive functions of understanding consequences to actions, determining good and bad, long-term planning, working towards a defined goal, and social control. It supports living compassionately and caring for others, and it's situated at the front, in between our eyebrows. Abigail Arbonell, author and relationship psychotherapist, looks towards neuroscience to discover how we relate. She says the language of the limbic marshmallow brain is emotions, And that to help wire up the prefrontal cortex, we need to be able to recognize and embrace every part of ourselves and all our emotions. As monk Thich Nhat Hanh writes, there are days when you feel it's just not your day and that everything is going wrong. The more you try, the worse the situation becomes. Everyone has days like that. That's when it's time to stop everything, go home and take refuge in yourself. Rearrange everything, your feelings, your perceptions, your emotions. They're all scattered everywhere. It's a mess inside. Recognize and embrace each emotion. Practice mindfulness and concentration and tidy up everything within yourself. This will help you restore your calm and peace. Restoring peace and calm, returning home to yourself through recognize and embracing your emotions and perceptions through mindfulness. This can switch on or help to fully connect the acorn brain, as can being in nature. And when you switch it on, integrate your prefrontal cortex, you can think about others, future generations, widen your circle of compassion. And as Max Planck, Nobel Prize winner and theoretical physicist, said, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. William Blake, writing over 200 years ago, thought that the way we perceive the world is a reflection of our state of mind. I feel that a man may be happy in this world, and I know that this world is a world of imagination and vision. I see everything I paint in this world, but everybody does not see alike. To the eyes of a miser, a guinea is far more beautiful than the sun, and a bag worn with the use of money has more beautiful proportions than a vine filled with grapes. The tree which moves some to tears of joy is, in the eyes of others, only a green thing which stands in the way. Some see nature all ridicule and deformity, and some scarce see nature at all. But to the eyes of a man of imagination, nature is imagination itself. As a man is, so he sees. But our phenomenal mental landscape seems to struggle in an increasingly technological world, demanding of our time and energy, where we are robbed of time and presence. So we gradually become unhooked, stressed out, and set even further outside nature into a polarity of it and me. Me, my place, my office, car, phone, house. Nature, a place to visit, not call home. A place to use, not to cherish and love. We are in marshmallow brains, left home, and turn the lights out. As Dr. Sharon Blackie, author, psychologist, and mythologist, writes in her book, If Women Rose Rooted, we can possess all the fine goods that our civilization has to offer us. We can have important jobs and social status and tone our bodies on all the latest machines. But without a sense of belonging to the world, we feel empty and our lives lack meaning. And Dr. Robin Wall Kimmerer writes, I wonder if much that ails our society stems from the fact that we have allowed ourselves to be cut off from that love of and from the land. It is medicine for broken land and empty hearts. It's time we returned home, followed the lane to the gateway of the senses, crossed the threshold and switched on the lights, to mend that which is broken and return to a healthy relationship with ourselves, each other, the land, and the rich myriad of creatures and processes that encase us, that support our well-being and survival. To slow down and dust off the old ways of interrelating, coming to a realization that home is not necessarily a place of four walls called ours. So cast off these heavy cloaks and breathe. Let them fall away into the earth to become the dust of yesterdays. Step forth lighter, the sunshine combing your hair. step forth into a new day. The earth loves you, love her back. With each step you make, with each breath you take, love her back, for she is you. Lockdown eased here in July, and I returned to the Ravens being and feeling utterly privileged and in awe to walk into this wonder where life is simplified and deepened at the same time, stilled as foot follows foot, step by step the way twines skyward, focused on the path over sharp edges and arêtes, ever present to the air on cheek, sun or rain caressing skin, ears alert for those ravens with their deep-throated call, which can carry for over a mile. I am conjoined, returned, home, to body, to land, to life. Many have experienced this connection and oneness with nature. And here are some of your experiences, accompanied by the music of Olivia Fern and her song, Calling Us Home.
She is calling us home. She is calling us home to our own hearts.
Elizabeth, thank you. That was excellent. Thank you very much. That was it was so, your poetry, it was so thoughtful and really quite emotive. And I think you couldn't have picked a better sort of tone for a musical sort of reflection at the end. That was really great. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. I just want to thank Olivia Fern there for her absolutely wonderful music. I find that song so emotive, and for Wendy Kemp there for those beautiful illustrations that she did as well. So it feels quite a collaboration between a lot of people. So yeah, thank you.
Excellent. Oh, wonderful. Yeah, we've had a few questions come in, and we have a little bit of time for a discussion, and we'll have to finish quite sharp for quarter two, but we've got a few things to talk about here. So one of our first questions, which we'll begin with, is from Julie, and she asks, Elizabeth, do you think that people have had time to discover and reflect on what's on their doorstep, as well as further afield during this time?
From people that I've spoken to, yes, because so many people only had their doorsteps and their gardens and the proximity around their houses. I remember listening to one radio program, and a nature writer was talking about her local cemetery. That was the only place. She lived in a city. That was one of the only green spaces that she had. And she came to notice this quite wild place, this cemetery, and all the flowers and the birds. And I think the birds really did seem to sing louder. I think it was so quiet. And quite a few people have said that to me when lockdown initially happened. It was so quiet. So I think after the initial shock, when we could relax a little bit and begin to just maybe go on that one walk a day, that, yeah, I think a lot of people reconnected with their localities and their local communities as well. What would have been rushing out to work. Yeah, I think a lot of people did.
I think that has to be, one of the biggest positives from lockdown, a silver lining, Absolutely. Excellent. Oh, we've got another, on that positive element, we've got a question from Kathleen, and she's asking, do you think that lockdown has brought any positive elements to it, or indeed the whole situation we're in at the moment?
I think, there was a Radio 4 show on this morning talking about car-free cities, and whether actually lockdown has provided the opportunity to go from auto-utopia, like the automated life that we live, to carless cities. And it's a very stark moment of lockdown, but actually maybe it does afford a time for reflection and really radical thinking of how we can change the way that we're living and the impact that we're having. So I do think, was that the question? How another positive impact? So yeah. I think on that side, and also, I'm sorry, my mind's gone blank.
Worry.
The positive impacts of lockdown. I also think the community that was created. I know a number of people have said that the kindness, the outpouring of kindness, and the help and care that people have showed one another has been a big positive of lockdown.
Thank you. Excellent. Well, I think we've got time for one more question, if that's okay. Let's see, a good one to end on, I think. Let's see. We've got a question from John, and he's asking, do you think that the wildflowers and the environment have managed better with fewer visitors to these places because of lockdown? It's an interesting one.
I think initially because it was spring, and it was a time that nature was kind of left alone. And it's interesting, being a gardener, we think that we're wanted, but there was a point that when you leave it all and you go in, it's like, life does go on. Nature doesn't lock down. It continues to burst forth. I know here in the Lake District, a lot fewer people came at the beginning of the lockdown period, so the paths weren't being walked, and it would have been fascinating to see what spring had looked like on the hills, but of course we couldn't, because we couldn't go out. So that's a kind of secret that nature's keeping to itself, and unless there were some drones taking pictures. So.
Excellent. Well, I have to say, well, thank you again so much, Elizabeth. That was excellent. It's been an absolute pleasure having you at the Orkney International Science Festival.
Thank you, Heather. It's so lovely to speak with you.
Problem. Great. Well, you'll be pleased to know this isn't actually our final talk of this evening. We have another one coming up at 9:15, the botany of beer, and I'm sure that's going to be excellent with Ken Duncan, so be sure to catch that shortly. And after that, we also have the festival club at a slightly later time of 10 p.m, so please join us at the table there if you take a fancy, and those links will be posted in the YouTube live chat just now for you. Excellent. Tomorrow it's our last day, Wednesday, the last day of the festival. And we have spaces at our PD Kirk lunches, and of course the Ceilidh tomorrow evening. So please do join us for that. And if you're enjoying the festival, please do like us on Facebook and our YouTube channel. Please follow us. And just once again, a massive thank you to our speaker this evening. A massive thank you to everybody who's asked questions and joined in with the discussion. It really has been excellent. And thank you again to our technical team, our invisible technical team.
Thank you.
Absolutely, without them, this festival couldn't go ahead, and the amount of work behind, putting together these events is phenomenal. So thank you to them. And I'll just have to say thank you, everybody, and good night, and hope to see you at our next events. Thank you.